So, some of y'all who are avid Webtoon readers have probably heard about this and have seen this poster and whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, like, the main thing that's going on right now, Webtoon created this ill advised slogan, right, to advertise their platform, which I will say I would like to see Webtoon advertise themselves more. I just would like to see them advertise themselves in a way that didn't look like this. Um, and this is, I'm saying this as somebody who, I'm not in the same position as a lot of Canvas creators, right? I'm not a Canvas creator. I'm technically, by all, you know, definitions, an originals artist, right? Webtoons helps pay my bills. We share an ad revenue. We have certain contractual agreements. So we have a business relationship. There are, I would imagine, the great enormity of creators who post on Webtoon do not have that relationship, are not in that kind of standing. I would venture, I would guess, and I don't know this with any kind of certainty, but I would guess at least 75% of the creators on Webtoon do not make any kind of sustainable living, let alone the kind of living that like originals creators have with Webtoon. And we can get into that in a second. So I understand why a lot of people are really upset by this poster. And I had some responses that I made on Twitter that I want to read real quick and talk about with y'all, because I think that this, to a certain extent, gets more to the issue in my mind. So, one second, y'all. Just need to get myself straightened out here. So, my response in regards to this, or my thoughts that I shared with my followers on Twitter, went something like this. I will give Webtoon props for actually admitting, although inadvertently, how bad the situation has been. The side hustle attitude is just as sticky in print comics and, ironically, literature in general. As somebody who looks at this as a calling, I hate that this attitude exists. All modern publishing platforms assume you are doing this as a side hustle and have very little interest in making the effort of advocating to help you move beyond that state, because it involves work, and modern resource management is about as hands-off as it comes. Not really too sure how Webtoon will constructively respond to the scenario, but I also think it's worth pointing out that this atrocious attitude goes deeper than the publishing platforms and seeps into the audience too. The whole thing is incredibly tenuous. And so, what I'm trying to say with all that is Webtoon, platforms like Webtoon, YouTube, you name it, right? Where the business model is, we will set up the marketplace, you bring us the market. This applies to a service like Patreon and Kickstarter as well. They don't offer you anything up front. All they offer for you is work that you don't have to do. So what Webtoon offers all creators is a platform where they can post their comics. There's a model by which you post the comics, so you don't have to think about that. You don't have to plan any of that out. There is a somewhat regulated commentary board or forum. There is an additional aspect that they've added, which is a social media platform. There's an infrastructure. And for me, I don't want to do that work of setting up the infrastructure. I'm not interested in doing it. I've done webcomics in the past, and for me, I did very minimal work on setting up a platform for it because that wasn't the thing that I was interested in doing. I didn't go to college to learn how to program a website. It's just not interesting to me. I have no interest in doing it, and Webtoon offered that platform for me. And now Webtoon isn't the only platform that does it, right? There's a bunch of different platforms that exist, and so I've certainly seen a lot of comics artists who, dissatisfied with the language in that advertisement and how they've felt, like they're being treated by Webtoon, have left the platform. Fair enough. It happens all the time, and fortunately we have such a abundance of these kind of platforms that one can do that, right? That being said, I think that there are certain realities that we as creators have to face. And one of those big realities is that you're not going to buck this trend. It is the trend. You can cite, right? You can cite your frustrations. You can cite your additions to solve some of the problems, but this is the trajectory, and this is the way that things are going for creators in general, for artists in general. Um, you can argue about like, oh, what is the possibilities of the NFT space, all that stuff. I'm not here to talk about that. That's not really my interest. I'm here to talk about sort of as a webtoon artist, how do I deal with having something of a fundamental disagreement, right, with the person or the not the person, although I guess in some ways you could say a person, the way that corporate corporate lingo functions legally. Anyway, the institution, right, with whom I am in a business partnership with, and to a certain extent, anybody who even canvas creators who don't necessarily get paid for what they do are in a business relationship with Webtoon. Um, because Webtoon does generate revenue from what they do, even if it's a tiny, tiny amount, right? So I think that for every individual who is involved with this, right, every individual who's a canvas creator, you have to sort of, or original creator or whatever, you have to figure out what works best for you. If you can begrudge, right, their mistake, which they apologized for, right? I didn't take a screenshot of it, but Webtoon did post an apology about it. How sincere it is, who can say? I'm not going to go into, how sincere Webtoon is about their apology. They did what they felt like they needed to do, and hopefully it inspires them to make more of an effort towards treating their creators as an important part of their ecosystem. Because without the creators, they have nothing. All they have is a platform, and the platform's useless. The marketplace is useless without the market. So I think that all of the artists out there, all of y'all who are submitting stuff to Webtoon, submitting things to that platform, you are crucial to it, right? Webtoon doesn't survive without you. And so I do think that it's important the way that, I'm seeing people respond with the hashtag not a side hustle stuff. I do think that's an important response. And I'm glad that people are doing it in a constructive manner, right? Rather than just being frustrated. Because ultimately frustration just doesn't go anywhere. You have to be constructive about it, and you have to be constructive in your response to it. Because ultimately what you're dealing with is a giant corporation of people who are basically juggling more plates than they can ever juggle. I don't know anything about Webtoons. I mean, to be totally honest, I don't know anything about their internal operations. Like how many people are on staff, how much are they being paid for their work, how overworked they are. Because just going into this, another aspect of this, right? And the main frustration to call it a side hustle, right? When I know for myself, I on a good week work 50 hours a week, but usually it's way more than that. Usually it's about 60 to 65 hours, and I'm not being paid that well for it. Like, to be totally honest, I'm not being paid as below minimum wage. I just happen to really love what I do, that I can begrudge that and find other ways of, sourcing income for myself in the meantime while I build up my repertoire, while I do that hard work of creating an audience and creating a work that's worth having an audience for, right? But that's hard work. And that goes the same for somebody like a super proficient in a successful title like Lore Olympus, where that artist has to hire assistants. Uh, who knows how much money is going into that, right? Because it costs a lot of money to hire assistants, and then those assistants are struggling just as well, right? And they're all working wild hours. I have, for myself, I have managed to find a livable, a begrudgeable, a compromise, right? I've been able to establish a compromise with Webtoon where here's the pace that I'm willing to make Trailer Park Warlock, and I understand that y'all have a rate that y'all are willing to pay me for that. And so long as these two things meet in the middle, we'll be all right. Now we'll see. Like after Trailer Park Warlock, Webtoon might be like, we don't really want to do that anymore. So you can go back to Canvas with everybody else and do that your way, right? Fair enough. Once again, like I was saying before, this is a business contract, and all business contracts require that word that I used earlier, compromise, right? Negotiation, a sense of there is reciprocity. And like I said, one of the means of reciprocity that I think that creators might be taking for granted a little too much is the fact that they're able to have an entire infrastructure at their disposal for free. In the past, you would have had to have bought a domain name, set up the domain name on your own, do all of that infrastructural work on your own. And I don't like it. Sucks, to be quite frank. Like, I don't want to ever do it again. And Webtoon was like, well, we'll do it for you. And I'm like, okay, that works. I'll do that. That works for me. That allows me to concentrate on the thing that I actually love doing, put it out there for y'all to read, and I have one less thing to sweat about in my life. At the same time, right, like calling it a side hustle is not a great choice of words. And once again, Webtoon acknowledged that, so I'll give them that. And like I said in that tweet, like I'm going to give Webtoon props for accidentally kind of saying something that is an issue, not just with Webtoon. Because you can take your title over to Tapas, you can take your title over to wherever you want, right? There's so many different online comic services that are doing very similar things to this. You're going to find the same treatment. They might not use the same wording, but they will use the same treatment. Because you are ultimately a resource for them to utilize. And that attitude's not going to change wherever you go. So, and this applies not just to webcomics or digital platforms. This applies to print comics. I worked in print comics for a while. You're in a side hustle unless you're happen to be like a big name that the print industry wants to see proliferate. There are a couple of names out there who are fortunate and find themselves in these particular situations where the industry happens to love them, so they get lots of work and get paid well for that. But that is not a frequent thing that happens. And even doubly so in prose literature. You see people get book deals, it doesn't mean what you think it means. It does not mean that they're doing well. They are, at best, in similar situations where they are making they're making minimum wage or slightly better, and that's often involving advancement deals, right, where they're given money up front, where sometimes they even owe money. Like if their title when it gets published doesn't meet the expectations of the publisher. And then you have situations with royalties where you might not even see any of those royalties if the book that you publish doesn't meet the expectations of the publisher. So I look at all of that and I say, for myself, because everybody has to make their own arrangement that works for them. But I say for myself, all right, Webtoon works for me. They're not great at everything, right? Like they have a lot of work to do in regards to proliferating their platform, talking about their platform, and talking about their relationship with their creators. That's an ongoing thing that's getting worked out. And my suggestion to y'all, especially to the canvas creators out there, my suggestion to y'all is, like I said earlier, you're not going to find different treatment from other platforms. You might see better language used, but that doesn't change how you're going to be treated because this is a universal trend. This is not something specific to Webtoon. This is the same way that YouTube looks at its video creators. This is the same way that SoundCloud looks at the people who put music on their platforms. This is the same way that Steam looks at people who put video games on their platform. They don't care. They're not going to care. And honestly, it's not their job to care. Not necessarily. It's their job to make sure that the platform runs. It's their job to make sure that all of the infrastructure works such that more and more and more people can profit off of their work. But it is not a guarantee, and it never was a guarantee. And if you're coming into this with the idea that it should be guaranteed, you're going to be disappointed. There's no other way of putting it. You're going to be disappointed with the results. So I think that it's very important that as an artist, you have to approach this with a certain attitude of no expectation. And this is something that's taken me years to come to terms with because this is a very difficult attitude to adopt. It means that you have to be willing to make something, to struggle, to put an incredible amount of effort at creating a work without the expectation of anybody even reading it, even knowing that it's there. But I will say that odds are, when you were a child, right, you were doing this without any expectation. You just started drawing, you just started putting pencil to paper, and you just started drawing characters, making comics, and you had no idea who was going to read it, nor did you care. And I think that it's important to adopt that attitude even now as an adult. Because that attitude is what allows you to actually enjoy the process of creating. It allows you to actually not get caught up in the frustrations that surround us in the modern world. They're never going to go away. They're never going to go away. I mean, I hate to break it to any of y'all who might feel like this is sour news to hear, but like, those frustrations are never going to go away no matter what level of success you hit. Whether you think you've made it or not, you're going to find frustration if you are personally set up in a way to be frustrated. And if an advertisement placed in a subway somewhere I guess I'm assuming it's New York because I don't know, New York City's like that. But anyway, if that's the thing that's going to make you feel dejected about what you're doing, that's an internal thing going on. If you feel like you need to give up your entire thing that gives you sort of a reason to live and to be and to keep creating, that is something you have to take care of first before you acknowledge and figure out how to deal with the external issue, right? Like the advertisement. Figure out what's going on, figure out why that stirs so many feelings up in you first. Because it isn't just that you feel dejected that somebody said what you do is a side hustle. It's also part of how you see yourself and how you see your own efforts and actions. And like I said, I totally understand why so many people are feeling frustrated about this. It was frustrating for me to see that advertisement. But also, I took a step back and I said, okay, I don't think Webtoon is intending on hurting anybody's feelings. And if anything, Webtoon's very much invested in making their creators feel like they're awesome. They try. I'll give them that they try. I have my own frustrations with Webtoon, but they do try. Um, so my point is, figure out for yourself what will bring you to the attitude where you are not bothered by what anybody says about what you're putting out there. And you're empowered to just put stuff out there regardless of people's reactions. Because ultimately, all the praise in the world is not going to make you happy. It really isn't. All the money in the world isn't going to make you happy. The only thing that actually produces happiness in your life is your own relationship to yourself. And I'm saying this as somebody who's still working on that. And will still be working on that after this video. So, anyway, I just wanted to leave those thoughts with y'all today. And for those of y'all who are out there creating, fighting the good fight, expressing your soul, I give y'all all of my most sincere, deep felt acknowledgement. And if you're feeling hurt right now, just remember that this is something that passes. And if you're not happy with Webtoon, there are tons of platforms you can switch to. Or you can also stick with Webtoon and the hurt will go away and you'll probably find yourself in an even better position than you were today just by how time passes. And like I was saying before, and I will repeat, if you're creating, you're here to create. Everything else is ancillary to that. It's nice, but it's ultimately icing on the cake. So first, work on that cake, all right? So anyway, I'll talk to y'all later, and y'all have a good one, all right? Bye.